This is an interview with Alice Wright for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project by Benny Miles at Miles College on November 10th. Mrs. Wright, how are you today?
Fine.
Good, good. We're talking about the civil rights movement during some of the earlier years. Let me ask you this about your family. What part of the state are your parents from?
Livingston, Alabama.
Okay. Were you born in Birmingham or were you born in Livingston?
I was born in Livingston.
Okay.
Sumter County.
Okay. How far away is that from Birmingham?
About 100 miles.
Okay. Did you grow up most of the time in Livingston?
No, I grew up in Bessemer.
Okay. How old were you when you came to Bessemer? Do you remember? Or
11 months old.
Oh, you were just a baby.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 2 brothers and sisters living, and I have 2 dead.
Okay. Were they born in Livingston also?
They were also born in Livingston.
Okay. So are you of the, not necessarily your age, but where do you fit in the 5 children? Your parents had 5 children?
The middle one.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about education? Did your parents have any so-called formal education?
No, they didn't have, I think they went about the 5th or 6th grade, more or less.
Mm-hmm. And were they from Alabama? They're from Alabama?
Yeah, Livingston.
From Livingston.
They were farmers.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. What kind of farming did they do, your parents?
Well, just cotton, basically cotton. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they raised other things, for their own livelihood. Okay, so
when you moved to Bessemer, what kind of, did they still have like a garden or things like that?
They had gardens and a cow and...
Did you?
Yeah, pigs and that type thing when we moved to Bessemer.
Okay.
In the early years.
Yeah. So did you learn to milk a cow? Or?
No, I just never did.
Did you have to feed the pigs?
Oh, yes, I would feed them.
Uh-huh. And when the pigs got older, did you all sell them or?
Well, they only just raised enough for themselves,
Okay. Oh, that must have been, I guess it was kind of hard work, though, huh?
Yes, it was.
What about your education? Did you go to finish elementary and high school?
Yes, I graduated from Dunbar High School in Bessemer, Alabama.
And what about after high school? Did you attend?
And after high school, I went to Booker T. Washington Business College.
How was that for you during that time?
It was fine.
What kind of courses did you take?
Well, I just took regular management courses such as typing, shorthand, English, that type thing.
And I guess during that time, was that the only place to go for a higher education, Booker T. Washington Business College?
Yes, at that time, back in 42 or 43.
I guess there were a lot of people that attended that school who, as they moved up, because of being able to go to Booker T. Washington, they were able to, and you included, able to get better jobs.
True, that is correct.
You had some other schooling that you, after Booker T. Washington, you went to UAB?
Well, I had taken a course in monetary science at Jeff State, and a real estate course at UAB.
How did you get involved in the movement?
Well, I got involved from my employer. He was the treasurer of the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Okay. And I would always keep his records, type up information when the kids went to jail to get them out on bond, and their weekly reports, see that the receipts and all was correct and sent to the bank for their collections.
Who was your employer during that time?
W.E. Shortridge.
And that's a funeral home?
It was at a funeral home.
How was that for you, keeping those books and the information that you learned? Because I'm sure even though doing numbers, but you had conversation and you knew some of the things that were going on. What were some of the things that they shared?
Well, it was like keeping up with the receipts of the week, because they had meetings every Monday night. And they would give, contributions, and so many people would give money and that type things, every week to keep the movement going.
How often would people get locked up?
Oh, gee, just every day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very crucial time at that time that I worked there when Mr. Shortridge was treasurer of the movement. It was just a daily thing.
During a time then that money was not that great and people didn't get paid that much, but they gave, how much money would people donate? Would it be a couple of dollars or more than that or less?
They donated quite a bit of money. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the doctors in Birmingham didn't want their names published, but they gave almost monthly donations to the movement.
Were these black or white doctors?
They were black.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why did they not want their names?
Well, it was just crucial then, They was afraid of being bombed and the pressure being put on you, if they found out you was supporting the movement.
Mm-hmm. You talked about the donations and people going to jail often. Were you ever afraid because you kept the books, or wondering if something may ever happen to you?
I really wasn't afraid, even though we would get daily threats over the telephone that we're coming and bomb you, and we're going to do this to you, and we're going to do that over the telephone. However, they never did do anything at the funeral home, but they did at Mr. Shortridge's home.
What happened to his home, or at his home?
Well, he was, they had this attempt assassination one night, and it just luckily that, and the grace of the good Lord, that he was not killed.
So when they attempted to assassinate him, how was that done?
Well, they shot at him several times, and the bullets went into his home, where his family, but no one was hurt.
Mm-hmm. So after that, did he decide, well, this is just too dangerous? And
oh no, he was a fighter. He was a civil rights fighter. And of course, they did have to put guards at his house. Things got so tense at one time.
How were the police back during that day, in terms of the neighborhood where you lived and also where you worked?
Well, they was always pretending they're going to help you, For instance, my son Desmond went into Bessemer to, I think it was McClendon at that time, for a sit-in at the lunch counter. Mm-hmm. And several of them was beaten. And about a day after, the FBI came out to get information and this and that, but you never heard anything else from them.
Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of lip service, huh?
That's all.
Mm-hmm. What about your family? Were they fearful for you? Were you afraid for yourself?
Well, I guess you just have to do what you have to do, and I never really thought about it too much. And of course, I used to also attend the movements on Monday night, and I was riding with someone else, at that time. So you just forget about it, and I just got used to the intimidating and all of them, the calls about they're gonna bomb you at the funeral home and that type thing. You just got accustomed to it.
What about at your home? Did you ever get calls at home? Because there's
no, I never did get any calls at home.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you have a son, Desmond.
Yes.
And when he was growing up, and your daughter Constance, when they were growing up, what did they think about the movement? Were they involved, or were they afraid for you?
Well, my son Desmond, he marched in some of the demonstrations, and at that time he was going to school at Abrams High in Bessemer.
Did you ever meet Dr. King?
Oh, yes.
What did you? When was the first time you met him that you?
Well, when I first met him, he was at the shop, the funeral home, you know, with conference with Mr. Shortridge. That's where I first met him, and then I would always see him at the movement, you know, on Monday nights.
What did you think of him?
Oh, I thought he was a wonderful man. I really did.
Did you have an opportunity to talk with him at all? Much?
Well, no more than just speaking casually, you know. They would go into their meetings and that type thing.
When you said that what a great man you thought he was, when you saw him and was in his presence, how did you see other people viewing him? What did they seem to think of him?
Well, the other people seemed to have thought of him, except some of the elder people. You know, they was always afraid. For instance, my church, they would never have the movement because they was too afraid of them bumming the church, you know, and that type thing. And there were some elders not having the same viewpoints as the others, but most of the elders was, you know, they was a little afraid.
What about your daughter? Was she involved, or I don't?
Now, she was not involved, and she did not know about the signs in the stores saying black and white. And when I used to tell her about it, then she couldn't hardly understand that, you know, seeing that type thing in stores that said black and white. But my son knew about it.
What would he say?
Oh, he just thought it was awful.
Your son went to college?
Yes, he's a graduate of Miles.
Okay. And did you instill in them the importance of voting?
Oh, yes, I did that. And when he got of age, he went down to register to vote.
When you became a registered voter,
Yes.
what did you think during that time of poll tax and taking? Did you have to take a test?
Yes, I just thought it was awful, and the questions they would ask you just was unreasonable.
What would you share with us some of those questions that they asked?
Oh, they would ask you such things as how many stars there in the sky, you know, that type of thing.
Just things that had nothing to do with learning to vote or
That's
wanting
right.
to vote.
That's right.
What was your community's relationship with the police department as you grew older? Were they, aside from when you said the police pretended that they wanted to protect you and they really didn't, in the community where you lived, what kind of relationship? Were the police friendly? Did they come into the community? Or
No, they didn't do anything for coming in the community unless it was crime. But other than that, you never saw them. Well, you would see them riding around in the community in their cars.
Were you a member of any community organizations other than the movement?
Well, I was a member of the Voters League there, you know, in Bessemer.
Okay.
But that was about all.
Did you hold an office in that, like secretary or treasurer?
No, I didn't hold any office in the Voters League.
When you said you got involved in the movement because of where you worked and your boss was involved. Was it something that you saw that you really just wanted to do, or was it something because you worked there that
It was just something I wanted to do. I just want to see, with the kids coming along, having a better life than I had.
How would you describe, let's say, a typical Monday meeting, or whichever night you met?
Well, they at that time the church usually would pack, and they also used to have officers there in the back to see what would go on. And I just assumed that they carried that information back to, you know, to their higher-ups or their bosses or whoever sent them there.
Did you go to jail at any time during the movement?
No, I never did go to jail.
What were some of the people who went to jail, because you knew a lot of them because of writing out, knew who they were because of the receipts and keeping up with the records? Did you ever talk with any of them once they got out? And if so, what was it like for them being in jail?
Well, not necessarily. Some of the officers of the movement went to jail, like Shuttlesworth and Reverend Woods and that group, you know, and in the marching when they would put them in jail. But that's about the extent of that.
What was your parents' reaction to your participating in the form of keeping the books? Were they concerned that, well, people are going to know that you're keeping these books and something may happen to you?
Well, they were concerned because they know at that time what could really happen to you. And at that time, nothing ever was done about it. It always, someone would come and ask questions, but never no results.
Well, what church were you a member of during that time?
New Zion Missionary Baptist Church in Bessemer.
Is that the church that you're still a member of now?
Yes.
Was your church very active in the movement?
Not active at all.
Do you know, did the minister ever say why?
Well, Reverend Ravesey was there at that time, and he was a kind of elder minister, and he, you know, with them bumming the churches where the movement was holding some of their meetings, I think he was just afraid for, you know, something happening to the church, so they were not active at all.
Okay. Because of the movement, what kind of benefit would you say that you or your family and even your community, what kind of benefit did you realize as being a part of the movement?
Of the movement?
As a result of the movement.
Well, they were hiring, you know, it was, you would go into the department stores, and it was unheard of being any black salesmen and that type thing, you know, nothing but white. And I remember distinctly this Pizettes, where you would have to go to the basement to eat, and of course you'd had to stand up, you know, at the lunch counter. There were no provisions there for you to sit. And, well, then you can go to the offices like City Hall and the county courthouse. It was unheard of going in there and seeing black people in those positions, as you do now.
What, if you were in control, I say, of the movement, and you could go back and change some things, would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't.
You think everything was okay the way
I think they did a wonderful job. I also feel that they made quite a bit of improvement, but there's still more improvement can be made.
Okay. What kind of improvement would you like to see made?
Now?
Yes.
Well, here in Birmingham, I think they've done quite a bit, you know, for heads of departments, you know, some of them being held now by blacks, which it used to be unheard of. But I still feel there's some type of improvement still can be made.
You said you kept the books during that time at the funeral home. So do you have any items that may be related to the movement, to the development of Birmingham that you would like to donate? Did you keep any of those old receipts just for to history or anything like that?
Well, Mr. Shavers kept all of that. And because we type up the daily receipts and who paid who, even though it wasn't public knowledge. And he kept very good books so far as that's concerned. And he kept all of that material.
So you don't have any?
I don't have it. It is in possession of his widow, Mrs. Sharp, but she has that information now. Letters from Dr. King and Y.T. Walker and peoples of that type things that they would write him, you know, when they were out of the city, when they weren't here.
Today, what do you think of the movement today? What do you think of youngsters today as relates to those that are of voting age? Do you think enough young people are registered to vote? Or do you think
I think they could do better. I do, for the sacrifice that they've had to get to vote, you know, and I feel that they really should use the opportunity.
Do you think, with looking what's going on across the country, that people utilize the power of the vote as much as we should?
No, I don't think they do, you know, because we just have that sitting down thing, you know, and then some of us take the attitude, oh, they're going to do this anyway, whether I vote or not, which is bad.
If you could say one something to encourage people to vote, what would you say?
I would say get out and vote. And it will really make a change.
Well, we certainly thank you for taking the time and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it, and we'll be talking with you a little later.
Thank you.
Well,